So what I want to talk to you about has been described by someone I know fairly well, or key players in his organization, a guy named Dan Sullivan and Tom Hardy. They wrote a little book called The Gap and the Gain. This is something in my life I figured out about 30, 40 years ago. And what they've said is extremely valuable and very, very important. And so it is going to be really a life changer for you, because it works like this. So I'll give you the way to get online in a minute. But the gap in the gain looks at the relationship between how we actually consider what we're focused on in life, trying to accomplish or do. And as a result, it actually puts us in a position to be frustrated and depressed, or very happy. And so what I want to do is kind of just show you this thing. So you're definitely wanting to be happy, right? And I'm assuming all this is working. I don't know if I can tell yet. Am I getting... am I getting feedback from you all? It says public visibility. So let's see if it goes this way. Should be. Here we go. Sorry about that. So what I want to explain is this kind of game here. So I'm seeing, yeah, Indianapolis, thank you. I can hear, but don't see anything. I'm catching up. It's all good. So let me show you how this gap and gain thing works. So what happens is in life, if we can draw this, in life, the way our life kind of goes is we make progress and not, and it goes down, and struggles happen, levels off, goes up, down, up, up, up. All right. So that's roughly how it goes. Things improve. Overall trend can be up. But what happens is we have a line up here, and this is an ideal that we've created. And with this ideal, we've got a fair bit of a problem. And the reason we have a problem is because I don't see the colors on here. So the ideal is some notion in your mind. And think about homeschooling. If you get yourself in a place where you have an ideal about how things should go in math, in writing, and reading, and meals, or anything, you've got an ideal, and an ideal is actually an impossibility. So an ideal is like the horizon. It constantly moves. It's out there, but it just keeps moving. And so the closer you get to the horizon, you're no closer. Further away, and you're no further away, but it feels like it. So the horizon is where the sky meets the earth. And I hope you know this, the sky doesn't actually meet the earth, right? That is an illusion. So when you set up an ideal for like a perfect homeschooler, et cetera, what you're hoping to do is really motivate yourself. You know, you're really trying to stretch to something. But since you've set up an impossibility, all that's going to happen is going to be depression. You're going to be sad. And this will let me have color. All right, so I'll show you this one. So this distance right here is where the problem is, right? And we could do it right here too, right? The trick is, if you're measuring, let's say you're measuring today over here, and you compare it with where you were last year at this time, that little distance you'll see is progress. And so what happens is that makes you happy. So the difference between this gain and this gap, the gap is the distance between what you want and where you are. And when you focus on that, you're just going to be frustrated because you're not there yet. It's not even possible with ideals. But even if you focus on a goal and you're just obsessed on the goal, you're not really tuned into the progress. You're not tuned into what to be grateful for, how well you've done, how you've improved. And what I'm wanting to do is invite you to start noticing this. It'll come in handy with the question we're about to have. But this is the game that with your homeschool, you want to engage with your kids and with yourself and everybody else involved. How are we doing now compared to last year, last month? How are they doing in math now compared to how they're doing reading now? And get them, and this is the trick, get them to measure this. This is the thing to measure, right? So measure. Pretend like that spells measure. You don't want to measure this. This is not a thing to measure. If you measure where you want to be and where you are, it's going to be frustrating and stressful. It's not you're not motivated, not that you don't care to get there, especially on a goal. But what you really want to do is talk about, what am I grateful about? What's going better this week than last week? In fact, I'd suggest that for your homeschool. Just start there. What is going better? What are we doing better now than we did last week? What's better since last week or better since last month? And you're going to find that if you do this very thing, it will be transformational. So this distance between the ideal and the real right here, this thing right here, that is not what you want to measure. That's frustration. That's frowny face. Measuring where you were to where you are now to where you were, and make that the measurement. Are we reading better? Are we doing math better? Are we cooperating better? Are we communicating better? If you have our courses, am I doing memory better? Am I doing relationships better? Am I communicating better? Is my focus better? That sense of progress, it's what you're grateful for. And when you do that, you're engaged in the joy of the activity, not in trying to figure it out. So if you're in a homeschool and you compare yourself to others, this is where the problem is. We should be toward them. They're towards the ideal. Compare yourself to where your kids should be relative to other kids. You know, that could be a bit of a problem if they're behind theoretically. But measuring a child that's learning to read, and they read better now than they did a month ago, and they're doing math better now than a month ago, and they're being a little quieter, a little more obedient or focused than a month ago. I mean, that is magical for your school. So that's the game, and I hope you find that helpful. So somewhere in here is the copy invite link. Excellent. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post here. I don't have a good way to do it on this computer, but I have another one that I can. And I want to invite you to join us on YouTube. And as I said, you know, you'll come in muted, stay muted. You can keep your picture on, picture off. If we talk and you post things there, that's going to be more of the kind of interaction that we want to have. So if you are not afraid of getting on Zoom, I'm going to give you a way to do that in just a moment. So this first question that I want to address that came up last week, and by the way, Jody's going to come in here in just a moment. So one last little bit of disruption. So copy this. And I'm going to post it here. Nope, I'm going to post it here. All right, this is the last of my annoying technology challenges. So there's the Zoom link. And Jody's going to be able to look at if there are any questions y'all pose there. But what I want to talk to you about is, if I can share it with you, is this particular question. All right, good. People are coming in. So yeah, just hang loose and let's do this question. All right. You look better than me today. That's something to say every day. So here on Zoom, I'm going to be able to share my screen a little better. And in doing that, I want to show you this question. So someone wrote, I won't be able to get on during the live due to helping with church camp, but I do have a question. You've already spoken on the topic. Please let me know. I'm curious about how to handle my 9-year-old boy who is still struggling with reading. He's very bright, dedicated, does what I ask, and honestly thought he'd be easiest to teach to read of my 3 boys. However, now that we've been in this reading journey for several years, I've already successfully taught his older brother to read. I believe he might be dyslexic. I purchased Alpha Phonics based on Karen's recommendations, Karen Rodriguez, friend of ours, and we'll be starting at the beginning using a multisensory approach, book, dictation, copy work each day, along movable letters. He can currently make it through short readers, but it's just a struggle, and he's very frustrated most days. Also feels embarrassed in social situations sometimes. Do you, Jody, have further advice? Thanks for everything we're doing for the homeschool world. So there's the challenge, okay? And I responded to her because I didn't want her to have to wait, as it were. But in the process of discussing it, I don't remember what you said. So if you would add it on, because the stuff I did was more of the steps to do, and yours was diagnostic, trying to figure out what's going on, and all that's relevant. But what I said and what I looked at as I listened to this, the child might be dyslexic. Jody is dyslexic, went through training as a kid for that sort of thing. And so she, this lady, what she's describing, the further details, they're traveling a good bit summer. They're like in a RV or truck or something like that. So she can read the kids or different things. What I noticed and I thought about, and what I get concerned about consistently is most of these things, like this reading or like mathematics, these things are progressive. So there's a dynamic where you can have what's called a gestalt, filling in of gaps, filling in of information. So like if you read, you know how to read, I can do this. I can look at the first sentence, the last paragraph, skip around in there, look at some things. My brain will kind of fill in the pattern. It'll be pretty accurate. But when you're actually trying to grow someone's skill, that's not how it works. They have to build on it. It's not like if you join math. I mean, sorry, everybody's joining, so my brain's going this. If it's not as though in math, if you miss something earlier, it'll make sense later. When you read a novel, you do that. I didn't know what was going on there. And then later you read and you go, oh, I get that. That's that gestalt type experience. Math is not that way. You have to build on it. You got to build an understanding of the skill, building a next skill. And that progression is how they develop a skill. Learning to read is the same game. So in the Alpha Phonics, I'm not sure what she's doing, but I suspect I didn't get that part of the conversation. But and we will. She may be on today. But the nature of the game is like with Alpha Phonics, it's not the goal in to get through the book or with any phonics. It's once you master the first thing, get what the am, and, is the first thing, the ahs, and, Sam, a few sentences. And you do that until it's mastered, plenty. And then you do the next thing, especially this situation. That's what I told her. I said, here's 2 things to practice. One, I would get him to read a book, and he was doing The Frog and the Toad. So I looked at it, and that would be a good one, but I would redo it. I'd reread it 20 times, 30, until he masters that book. Once a person masters a thing, their brain starts understanding what the game is. And maybe it's hard, maybe it's difficult now, but if they do it enough times to where they master it, they'll own the story, the content, the words, the word meanings, okay? The second thing I suggested was to start doing narration. So she said she read aloud to the kids. And if you do that, if you read aloud for, let's say 10 minutes, 5 maybe, but 10, and then you call on one of your children, hopefully they don't know which one, and rotate it, and have them summarize back to you what they were talking about. So I just read a moment ago her note to us, and I would say the summary was, there's a mom who's struggling with a kid. She has several that she's homeschooled, but this one's struggling with reading, and it embarrasses him and frustrates him, and she's looking for ideas of how to help him read, along with sharing a few thoughts of what she's been doing, something like that. It doesn't have to be great, doesn't have to be wonderful, but it hooks their brain up because they're listening, and then they're sharing back to you. So they're using really their whole brain in the process. They're listening, feedback loop all the way back out. That's what you're going for. That's what you're looking for. So I suggested that. I suggest reading that. I'd suggest also at the phonics, as I said, let's do a page and master it, or one section and then master it. Don't rush ahead, as it were. And then the last thing, especially I threw in, is when you're learning phonics, learning to read and learning spelling, is you don't want your children guessing. Guessing is where the problem is. So you shouldn't guess on spelling. You shouldn't guess on how to pronounce a word. You should sound the word out and then decide what it is. So my suggestion would be, take a page and go backwards, each word in reverse order, and just read the word, make sense of it without a context or a guess. Just what does it sound like? Let's do a hard one. Ambulance. So ambulance. And when you sound it out in that way, through that mechanism, they're having to connect the phonetic code then to the word, not just guessing what it is. So I said, if you do it backwards on a page like that, or you could do a list of just words that don't have to have a context, and just practice sounding out those words without it being reading. This is the problem with the look, say, what they call it, home language, excuse me, orientations. They're so busy about self-esteem, making kids feel good, and comprehension about their reading and all, that they skip the coding part or decoding part. Because once you can sound it out, I can pull out a Greek dictionary. I think, well, I don't have to prove it to you. I'm going to knock something down, but I can read Greek to you. I can't always, a lot of those words are tricky. There's something called hepexlegumenas, which are used one time in the New Testament. And so you don't always know what it is, even if you're proficient. And I've not practiced that with my Greek, but I could read it out loud, and I could read it to you, not knowing what it means. That's kind of what phonics is about. I should be able to sound it out and say what the word is, and then say, what's an ambulance? That works gloriously. So with those things in place, she wrote back, and she, got a little bit of a vision. And now we have an update. So Elise, I'd love you to come on Zoom if you want to talk. It's up there. She said, thank you for answering my question. We did exactly what you suggested this morning. He read a section of Frog and Toad, about 4 pages, and then had him reread the same pages. Saw a big improvement. And by the way, one thing I did say to Elise is, if you do this and he doesn't improve, then he probably really has a problem. But sometimes people are not motivated, or their reading readiness games, a little slower. We know people that didn't learn to read till they were 12, or I know one person, he's doing super now. So all those things are in play, but it's building a confidence, and it's also getting the brain to hook up how it works. So she also made sure he was not guessing, and had him go back and sound out words he was struggling with, going to add in narration next morning reading time. So this apparently is in a good motion. What do you want to add to all that?
Well, just to encourage people to, one, if you feel like your child has missed something in math or phonics, stop. Even if they're older, stop, go back, spend a week or 2, a month on those basics, and it will be well worth from there on out. You're not gonna slow, they're not gonna miss out. That's going to help them. We had to do that with math and with phonics with some different ones of our kids. Just if you realize, hey, some of you forgotten it or something, just missed it, just take a week, take a day, take a month, whatever it is, and go back and
Keep going.
review those things and get them down, hammer them down so that sorry, hammer them down so that it goes much more smoothly from there. So if they're stumbling around with some things, just handwriting. If all of a sudden their handwriting is horrendous, it's been better, go back, say, hey, we're going back. We're not writing a story right now. We're practicing our handwriting for a week.
Yeah, we did that with phonics, as she said. The kids would get a little sloppy about it, not remember it. We'd go back and just take a break for a week. Let's nail down phonics. If you're not getting something, you got to go back. I didn't get long division in 5th grade public school, and 6th grade it became obvious, and I got tutored in the afternoons with the teacher, and I caught up on long division. But I needed what we called long division. I don't know what to call it now, but that's the game. It's got to build. You got to back up and really nail that down. You need to get that skill down. When I was 5, maybe 6 years old, Dr. Hollingsworth taught me to ski, and I had a boat. My friend Thomas was, we're same age buddies, and so going to learn to ski at 6. And what he made me do to learn to ski is get in the lake, in the water with the skis, and take them off and put them on. Take them off, put them on. Take them off, put them on. Probably spent an hour doing that until I got to where I could take them off and put them back on in the water, not getting out of the water. And I got really good at it over my life. But even then, he didn't want to stop and be waiting for me to put my skis back on. So he had to nail down a skill that allowed me then to move to the skill of learning how to ski, how to get up, etc. And that's what we're talking about. So most of these things, we're rushing ahead, hoping they'll get it later. Don't do that. Don't do the get it later. If they're reading a novel, maybe they will get it later. Some piece early, some piece late. But in mathematics and in learning to read, and even in writing, if they're not capitalizing the next letter after a period, maybe just work on that. Just only grade for those things in the writing, just to make sure that we've got the capitals going after a period, the punctuation. Another week, maybe there's a skill about even it's just handwriting, like making all the letters about the same size, because you're big and little and all, it reads like those cutout newspaper things for a ransom, on shows. And what you want is it to look uniform. So you might want to practice that. So, and that's part of why we do, writing practice before, like creative writing. So they're nailing down that skill, because that skill builds on another one.
Exactly.
All right. Phew, that's enough, but it sounds like it's great. And so questions.
Yeah.
All right. Right now you can type them in on YouTube. You could type them in the chat here, or you can raise your hand if you look down there under participant, somewhere in there. There's maybe it's under reactions.
Oh,
I used to know this. Recognize hand gestures. Anyway, there's a way to raise your hand, probably on your own thing. So what questions you got? What are you wrestling with? What else are you wrestling with?
What did you teach them this morning?
The gap and the gain stuff.
Oh, what we talked about.
Yeah. I thought about
Good.
other stuff, but I thought that would be helpful. The more they measure, how are we doing compared to where we were? In fact, just like Elise did, she's measuring now how he did reading the tog and the frog, the frog, the tog and the frog. Maybe I'm dyslexic.
Frog and toad.
So the frog and toad, or frog and toad. I read no children's books growing up, hardly any. So I can't even.
I went
pronounce
upstairs
them
and
well.
got a copy and showed it to him.
Yeah, I'd never seen it. So reread. So going over that, she can already see measuring how he was doing to there, and he's going to see it too. That's the cool thing. So What are you wrestling with homeschool? And I'll make up new things, but I'd rather us talk about your stuff. And this isn't that I have all the answers. Sometimes it's our interaction, or someone will throw out another hint or something.
Especially resources. I think it was last week or the week before that people were sharing good resources with each other.
Gotcha. Make sure this thing's scrolling. Okay, it is scrolling. Okay. I also noticed with my child that why don't you read that? Can you?
Okay. I also noticed with my child, she needs to have her finger on the word when reading. Otherwise, she feels like her eyes are jumping around. Finger pointing forces her to look at the word to be read. Yes, she's given excellent suggestion.
And Evelyn Wood speed reading, and I've had 6 speed reading courses. So all of them, they want you to use your finger or a pencil as a pointer because it directs your eye and your focus. Another way you can do that same thing is the editor's trick, where you can get a card, like a index card, blank side, and you cover up the words coming. So you just see that line, and then you move down a line and move down a line. That has a focusing effect on those words.
I've actually used both of those.
So that's a good one.
Kelly says, I have a 13-year-old son who will take all day to do school.
Did you read that?
I'm always worried about being behind. Thanks for the word of it's okay to pause.
Yeah.
Good. To catch up and all. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Then I have a 13-year-old son who will take all day to do school.
Okay. So a 13-year-old
son
will take all day to do school. So Kelly, what does all day mean? So if you type that in, that would be a big help. So all day, what I'm hearing is he gets up, he starts probably mid-morning or so. He works on it, dawdles, looks around, something interrupts, got to go, feed the pigs, got to come back. I really know none of this story. I'm just saying I've heard similar stories. And then you have to eat some, so you got to take a break for lunch. Then you come back and he works on it, and he just daydreams and doesn't quite get it done, et cetera, et cetera. Am I close?
He sits there and does, and then we got to come back up. How do I do that? Does nothing.
I think that's the whole thing.
He sits there and does nothing.
Right. So why would a child, does he know what to do? Like, does he have assignments? Does he have things to do? And I'll go ahead and skip and tell you the trick. So when you have forever, you'll take forever. So what he needs is a deadline. And the way this works, I don't know what subjects you have, so if you could type them in, that'd be great to know. Right. So if you have subjects, let's just say you have reading, writing, and arithmetic. So what you want to do is you want to have a limited amount of time for him to do his lessons. Let's just say at this stage it's an hour. Okay, you got an hour of math and you've got an hour of reading, and let's say you have 30 minutes of writing. Just 2.5 hours. Okay, and I would say that may be where to start if he's getting nothing done. I don't know how he got up to this point. I assume he can read, etc.
He has a daily checklist: math, reading, grammar, and writing.
Okay, math, reading, grammar, writing. So he has a checklist, but what he needs is a time limit. And so what he needs is a certain amount of time. We got to where it was 2 hours for math, but let's say it's just an hour. How many problems can he do in an hour and make a decent grade on it? Make a 90% or better. So maybe it's 10 problems. Maybe it's not a whole lesson. Maybe it's half a lesson. What do you care? If he's actually learning that and nailing it down, the speed will take care of itself. You've got some time, but you want him to really learn it. So he's got an hour to do, let's say 10 problems. If he in that hour, let's say 20, if he in that hour does not do the 20 problems, that hour's up and it's over. It's not just a checklist, it's a time constraint. And so when that hour's up, that means you're going to have to do whatever you didn't get accomplished in the afternoon. And the same with reading. We want you to read a certain number of pages. You need to figure out his pace and a fair number. And you don't want to make this too hard because you want them to win. right? So that he gets his reading done. Well, if he doesn't get his reading done, that's going to be homework in the afternoon, right? And he's going to have another period of time in which to complete that. Or maybe you let that go in the afternoon, he can do it. But what you're going to find the same with writing, as a period of time, if he's not through writing his 1 page or 3 pages or whatever it is, it becomes homework in the afternoon. When you do this, what it does is it empowers the child. He's not trapped. This kind of stuff is trapped for a child. Instead, he has control. Like, if I will focus and get this done in an hour, I don't have any homework. My afternoon's free. I'll focus here and get it done. And what's happening is he's sitting there, maybe he has ADHD problems, maybe his motivational problems, maybe he has hormones, maybe he doesn't like the sound of the birds outside. I don't know. But he doesn't have a way to focus because he doesn't have that limit. And that limit will generate and drive it. So what happens is, I've got so much to get done in this period of time, and that's good training if he does any higher level academics of any kind, because that's how they work. SAT tests and all the rest of this stuff, that you've got a time limit, and jobs do that. You know, you need to get this job done by a certain time. You can't keep a job and just take as long as you want. That's not how it works. In coding and programming, they do a thing called sprints, and they set it up, and everybody's sprinting to get to a place. He needs that too. Each of these topics are little daily sprints, and do that sprint in that time period. Don't give him a list and don't give him all day. He doesn't have all day. I'm pretty sure with our kids, I know me, and I probably would have set it up that way. And if there's really a problem with not focusing, I'd say, well, we're going to get some productivity out of you. So in the afternoon, if you don't finish it in that period of time, you'll do an extra hour of chores of some type. I'll create a project in the yard or something, because I'm not gonna have you sit around and waste your life and mine. You're on my watch. If you don't learn it at home, God's going to take you on a field trip. Now, I don't want to feel guilty about that. So it's like, you can figure this out and get with the program, because 13-year-old boys do it all over the world. Now, if he's got something special going on, that's fine. But I think you'll find, if you set up these limits and make it a limit, like math is a drop your pencils, time, math's over. Next, how far did you get? How many did you get right? That kind of thing. That's the game. And by the way, if you don't know if math's too hard or something, just let him do the same problems again the next day and the next day until he can get them done in an hour. So he learns to accomplish it, just like we're finding with Elise's child.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to put, if he has ADHD or something, if he has issues, that's a different thing. But a 13-year-old boy, it gets down to this: we're going to do this, and if it has to be a negative happening, not doing it, you know, you are capable, if he is, and you seem to think he is, so we're going with that. But it's just not going, we're not going to accept it. So I think the time limits are vital. And then if we go for like a week and it's still not working, then okay, we're going to add in some not so fun things that are going to happen if you don't start.
Yeah, I mean, this is just silly.
So because he's 13.
Yeah, I can say this too. Honestly, this is my view, and it's an opinion, and I can get in trouble. I'm not that worried about it. But you know, where's the dad in this? So we found that the boys listen to me differently than they listen to mom. And it was like, you know, if you don't do your work, I'm going to invent a way for you to do your work. Trust me. And I was pretty good at it. And, you know, they got it. They got with the program, didn't they?
Yeah. Starting about 12, I would word things like this to the boys. Your dad and I says such and such, or your dad said you had to. So that wasn't just me, you know, because God's putting testosterone in them. That is great. He wants them to be godly men, leaders, fantastic. But they still need a lot of guidance. But it did work better to know that, yeah, your father's going to be backing me up on this, or I'm just giving you instructions from him directly. That kind of thing helped in a lot of areas, for sure.
Yeah. So Zeta throws out here, I guess if I get people to do the questions, it shows, I can show it. It doesn't matter. I'll just read it. Keeping everyone in order. I have kids that have a lot of input, and sometimes it's hard to complete a sentence or a thought. How do I keep them engaged without them hurting each other's feelings? So a lot of input. It's hard to complete a sentence or a thought. How do I keep them engaged without hurting each other? I feel like they all think they're leaders. 12, 10, and one that just turned 7. Yeah. So this is Lord of the Flies. You need a conch shell, and everybody gets to pass it around to talk. So here's the thing about leadership you want to teach them. I think it's great. I think tell them, hey, y'all are all leaders. You want to share your view and your opinion and all, but you can't learn to lead, and you can't be any good at leading if you don't know how to follow. So there's something called mutual respect. And what we're going to learn to do is not interrupt the other person while they're talking, So if you interrupt somebody while you're talking, you lose your turn, who's next or something like that. But that's just something you just catch up on. The input's great, but they're going to have to learn in meetings and in life to just take their turn. If this is a real problem, I know me, I would probably do something like, all right, I want you to write down what you want to say in a paragraph. Have them all do it, and then have them read their paragraphs out loud. Because if you do that, they'll all take turns. And if you'll do that often enough, they won't want to do it anymore. It's like, that's too much work. Because if y'all are all going to talk at once, talk over each other, I'd rather hear it. So everybody's going to write down what they want to say, write it down, and read it. But I'm just telling you, if you just stand up and go, this is what we're doing, gang, come on. This is not a way to function. But I do, my experience is that writing thing will probably take care of it. Cool.
Nicole has several things on here. This is learning something new here, looking at both screens. Nicole says,
we're eventually going to get here.
Oh, I have anxiety as well as depression. I have a form of PTSD, and during an episode, self-regulating is difficult. I've been stepping out of the room to collect myself, but it's really interrupting our schedule, especially on days when I'm repeatedly being triggered by emotional memory. Any ideas on what I could or should do with this? I do see a professional as well.
Yeah, so I'll give you an idea. I mean, this is your own challenge of memories flooding you. Obviously, you want to figure out how to renew your mind, to keep your mind on things that are helpful or good. But I went through a fair bit of depression years ago. I was in seminary, especially. I remember when it peaked, but it was even back in college. A lot of things happened in my life and family, all kinds of stuff. And so I was depressed consistently. And I'm going to tell you what I did, and then I want to apply in a different way. You might want to do what I did, but apply in a different way too. So what I started noticing in this depression I had ongoing is that it drove me to think about myself a lot. And so, which makes sense. And you're thinking about the past and something bad and regrets and all. And so one of the ways you get over depression is you take that thing and learn from it. Like that event, whatever that event is, I'm sure professionals having you do it. If you would journal about lessons to learn about it for life and get some real clear lessons from the experience, and they're always lessons. But once you get a lesson clear in your mind, it becomes purposeful, and you won't look at it exactly the same way. I'm not saying it won't be an issue, but it won't be exactly the same thing. And so learning to process it is part of it. But what I figured out to do was to take a day off a week. I took Mondays off of thinking about myself. And the way I did that is I said, look, Tuesday, I'm going to load up. Man, I'm going to just, so things in my, said, man, I can't wait to think about myself Tuesday. And then Sunday, I would go, Monday's coming. I better think about myself a lot today. But I'd take Monday off as much as I could. And that break, and knowing that break was coming, allowed me to create some separation from just obsessing on the thing. Now, I say that for you in that I think if you would schedule breaks instead of letting the emotion build up. So if the kids understood we have a game plan, but mom's working on stuff and I'm going to take a break every 15 minutes, y'all keep working your breaks or whenever, so however you want to set it up. But if you know that you're going to get to be able to leave the room, it won't be the same thing of build up, build up, build up. I've got to get out. So I'm going to take a break, go outside, walk around, breathe, look at the trees, do this stretch, do your hand like this above your head. That was always a good one for your neck. So having that kind of practical orientation where I'm really engaged in what I'm doing in maybe some shorter segments, could start giving you a different experience with having some more control, because you've anticipated it instead of wait for the pressure to build up to crunch you.
And just alongside that, just some things we've talked about before. Also, the more your homeschool is systematized, the kids know what they're doing. They can do pretty much of it on their own. They're not needing you there every second. Will totally help you, have
100%.
set time. And they know what to do and they know when to do it.
9 to 10 is math. So we're doing math. If you're trying to teach them all the time, you need to go back through a lot of our videos and other stuff and go to independenthomeschool.com and get our 2 hours of videos of how we talk about doing it, or our 30 minutes a day course, or just watch all the YouTube videos. Yeah, all these, because it is so important for you to get a vision for the children to become their own teachers. You're the CLO, the Chief Learning Officer. You want to cause them to learn. If you get it on yourself that you have to do all the teaching, and I don't know if you're doing that, but it would be likely. So you want to get out of that game. You can't compete with the school system that way. They've got to learn how to learn. You want to raise happy adults, and they've learned to teach themselves. So they get to struggle a little bit. You're not always answering their math questions instantly. They come with a math question. You say, read to me the explanation in the book. Don't give them the answer. Let them read it. And you say, what does that mean? And then they explain it. And they usually go, aha. And if they don't, say, well, work the problem out loud. Let me listen to you work it, and have them do that. And usually they fix it. And if they don't, then show them. But going through all that, your kids eventually go, I don't have time to teach this woman math and myself, So that's the game.
Oh,
Anything else there?
Amanda says, not with Nicole. Amanda
Are we on the
says,
same person?
right here. Nicole she just said Lord of the Flies.
All right, you just read.
Amanda says, is co-op on Fridays worth it for socializing?
What now?
Is co-op, going to co-op on Fridays, is that worth it for socializing?
Oh, it's a question.
Yes.
I couldn't tell.
Sorry.
So, worth it. It depends on your goals. There are a lot of ways to socialize, and we got to define what we mean by socialize. Like, are you saying how to interact with people, have conversation, discussion? If you mean that, going to the nursing home and talking to older people can also be socialization, right? Scouts, tennis, playing, all those things can be socializing. Co-op can be, but I don't know if co-op is there exactly. It does create a competitive dynamic. So kids, concerned about what other kids are doing, so they focus on reading better, writing better paper, etc. But I think it depends on your world. If you're in a rural part of Iowa, but there's a co-op in the area, I could see that. If you're in a very populated city and it's very busy, and the co-op is just extra work and slowing down your kids, we experienced some of that kind of with schools, like a co-op. It may not be, but that's going to have to be the kind of thing you figure out. I will say this, it's really dependent on what you want your kids to do, in terms of socialization and interactive skills and just talking with people and being around people and etc. So if you have a vision of what that is, then what they're involved with, you can tell, is that working? Are they getting better? Not the ideal, but are they better than they were? And that can happen in all kinds of places, churches, civic things. I don't just love the idea of perfectly isolating children in their own age group. There's a lot of math on that shows that that's not a good plan, that doesn't create flexibility in their communication. So
right. No, good deal. Next person. My 6-year-old can read 3 to 4 letter words. We use 20 easy lessons and alpha phonics. When it's learning time, he spaces out. He doesn't try, and he acts like he doesn't know letter sounds. It's a 6-year-old boy.
So he's spacing out usually is an indication of some kind of internal boredom. It could be like an ADHD dopamine thing, or it could be just boredom. So what you're wanting to do is make sure the time limit and the challenge is appropriate for the moment. So I would suggest is that you start up front and saying, look, we're going to do phonics for this long, and here's what we're going to get done. Okay. And so if you focus on it, we are going to make progress and get it done and be done with it. It'll be quicker. Like maybe it's 15 minutes, 6 years old. Maybe it's 15 minutes, but if he wants to drag it out to 30, you could do that. But in either event, what I would be aiming for, or encourage you to aim for with your child, is a limit and a focus about how much we're going to accomplish and what's the time frame in which we're doing it. When it's just in general out there and we're just going over numbers and doing the thing, it's a very different story. You know, even if you had children, I had to do this growing up, build a wall. We had to collect rocks. There were rocks everywhere, and build a little rock wall between our backyard and our garden and the foothills of the Appalachians, plenty of rocks. And it was torturous to me. I mean, it really was. I remember it distinctly. And it just would go on and on and on and on. You know, if they had said, look, if you build the wall to this point, you'll be done. Or if they said, look, we're just going to do this, we're going to do it for an hour and then you're done. If I had anything in my mind where a stopping place would be, I would be able to focus with, you know, my attention deficit. Oh, squirrel problem. So I would just suggest that, again, limits create focus. So limit what you're trying to do and the time you're doing it, and make sure it's clear that he understands it, and conquer it. And then you can extend the time.
He had added information, which you might have already covered, but I'll just go ahead and read it. She says, I took the course and I have a plan, object and process for him, but he plays like he doesn't know his sounds and can't read. He's been on the same lesson for 2 weeks and still doesn't try. I've tried to allow his older siblings to help him, but he does the same thing. My 4 and 5-year-old is advancing more than he, and I feel bad because I know it's the effort he puts in.
So I don't understand this. So
No.
the sounds, so he does know his sounds or he doesn't?
She thinks he does, but he doesn't.
Why
He
is
acts
she
like she
doing that?
doesn't, because I thought there was more to that one. Right here, I'll show you where I stopped.
So if he knows his sounds, why don't you just do his sounds until he knows them? Like, do a certain number of sounds, and that's how we're working on until you know your sounds. I'm not gonna make you read if you don't know your sounds. So let's go back. Let's just do your sounds. And we're gonna do half an hour of sounds, and we're gonna get them down. We're gonna do a chart. The name, sounds, know, don't know, check, knows. We'll have a whole list. It'll all be done. It'll take you a week, and or two. What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, and if it really is, you think he understands and knows these things, and it's just for some reason, not acting like he does, it might be time to put in a carrot stick type thing. Like, we're going to do this, and we're going to keep going forward and reading, but this will be a reward. This will be a punishment if we don't pick up.
Well, what he should be saying, I'm with you, but
Okay.
what he should be saying is, I don't want to do this. I don't like it. But if he's saying, I don't know my sounds, I would just get that out of the way and say,
No.
I remember in high school, I had a kid who's very successful now, but in high school, I was teaching high school, and he was getting him all to work on goals. And he said, well, my goal is to dig a good ditch. And he's just being a smart aleck, right? But I didn't take the bait. I said, interesting. I said, tell me about that. Why? And we talked about it. And then we talked about how he would build a good ditch, why it would matter, why doing something right. I mean, I made him go into such detail about how to do a ditch and nail it down, that he had a perfect vision, a perfect plan for how to do a ditch. And two things happened. One, that was no longer a goal. He'd really thought it true. And two, never had a problem with him smarting off. Because if you want to take half my class to really make you spend a lot of energy noticing what a silly little guy you were in front of all your peers, let's do it. Well, I'm saying the same principle. If you got a 6-year-old that says, oh, I don't know how, you know, it reminds me of a little kid named Patrick I knew growing up. He came one time I was older. He says, he was telling me, he said, I can't say pacifier. I have to say peace pie, you know? So he called it his peace pie because he couldn't say pacifier, though he told me he couldn't. Yeah. Well, this same thing. If he knows his letter, he knows him. If he doesn't, if he thinks he doesn't, maybe you need to help him discover them. So that's out of the way. We know you know them. Don't say that anymore. If he doesn't know him, he doesn't know him. If he doesn't know, he doesn't know him. I mean, I just get that out of the way. Let's just knock that out. And once they're out of the way, you get to say, don't you mean I just don't want to do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Let's just catch him.
And then we have a new game, which is, so what's up with you not wanting to do it? I don't really get this part, because this isn't a question. We aren't asking if you want to do it. You're not in that kind of world. You know, you're in the world is, this is what you're going to do. And all we're wrestling with is how much pain you're going to go through, you know, not physical, but emotional, whatever, to get it done.
I've got one more over here. And I know you.
Yeah, I've got some stuff here. So let me switch over.
Okay.
Keeping every, said that, good one. Did you use the book exams on RC? What are your thoughts on that? We've answered that before.
Yeah, we did maybe 2. No, we did not. And I've seen on the different sites for RC, the different Facebook groups and all. Somebody, I think at some point rewrote some, made some. I could be wrong about that, but you could look into that. A little different. I had moms that, you know, when somebody asked that question, they would say, I took the exam, I flunked it. So I'm not saying don't.
Well, and there were reasons we didn't. For a while we didn't give many exams. We had some with, we had a lot of things going on. We had a child with CP and some other things philosophically where we're going. I don't want to get them obsessed on measuring exams too early. I just want them to get into, I'm doing math and I'm doing writing, doing reading. We did measure number of pages they read. We did measure in math how many they got right. So I wish I had done a little more of this kind of testing, and we eventually got to where we'd do that. We'd have a weekly or something math test, monthly math test. Mm-hmm. So instead of doing math that day, they had a test, and if they didn't do well, we tweaked the system. Okay. But the book exams are fine if they're good. I would rather write a report. If you want them to do something, and I would follow my process. It's both in a material, and if you just Google Fred Lybrand book report, you'll find it. It's in our blog, and I just don't know where it is. But it tells a different way to approach doing a book report. But mostly we got the kids on reading. We might do it at the end of a book to talk through the book with us, tell us what it's about, what happened, etc. But mostly every day we'd get them to each other and to us, give a summary of what was going on, like the narration. That's kind of like an ongoing way of learning, and it's a better loop. It's kind of the complaint I have about companies that do yearly reviews. A yearly review is one of the dumbest ideas. Why not have a 5-year review? I mean, that's so far out. You ought to be reviewing somebody that works for you, or you want to get reviewed monthly, regular, when there's an issue, quarterly at least, if you want feedback on improving something. It's not this out there. So book exams at the end of the book, throw them in, give it a try. If they've redone them, that'd be fine. But there was a level of complexity to them that wasn't quite getting to just the overall structure of it, more like a tedious, how many moles did Herbert Chaucer have on his chin in the scene by the pool? And it's like, really, this stuff drives me crazy. And I'm not saying Robinson did that. I'm saying in principle is how I think. Did he do that? Was that close?
He didn't do the
or
test.
Whoever did.
Okay. Yes,
and it's fine, but you get a very detailed fact finder that overcomplicate things. and they love this kind of detail. And that's awesome. And there's a bell curve. And that means there's about 15% of the people that are going to love that kind of test. The rest of us, ain't nobody got time for that.
Okay, I've got over here. I'm wondering if you taught kids cursive. If so, what age? And did you ever require to write their daily compositions in cursive? Sorry, there's the hearts are on top of the words, so I don't know how to remove those. That's why I stumbled over. We did do cursive.
We did. I wish we had done it a little more rigorously. I was more fond of printing, but I didn't recognize at that stage that tweezer dexterity, hand-eye coordination, dysgraphy, all the things that go into this. Cursive is easier. It's an easier game to do in terms of the motions, so the pickup and the pinpoint of the square and block writing for young children. So, but we taught cursive. I mean, you did that
Thinking
more.
it was maybe around third grade, especially with the older kids, just because that was, I think, a thing out there. And then as far as their papers, most of them started writing them in cursive. One child wanted to print. So we just had a thing where you have to do so many days a week in Laura, so many days a week in cursive and so many days a week in print, just to keep up with both the abilities.
Yeah.
So that was our thing.
All right, gang. It was great fun. We're gonna have about 2 weeks where we're because of summer not going to be able to do this, and but we'll be back. If you don't get emails about this, you do get live things. But if you go to independenthomeschool.com and sign up for our free thing, it just gets you on the mailing list, so you get updates about when things happen.
Yeah,
loads of fun. We'll get better with the Zoom, and then you're going to get brave enough to talk to us live. And I'm way better talking live than I'm answering these questions. But it was awesome. Hope you have an amazing weekend.